Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Roland K. Smith and one of the ways I make a living is through photography and videography. And today I am going to be reviewing the Fujifilm X-T4. This is the camera I own, this is the camera I'm shooting this video on. I'm going to be answering the question, is the Fuji X-T4 good enough? Spoiler, yes it is. Now if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you're thinking about picking up the X-T4. So I want to talk about Fujifilm generally for a little while. Because when you buy a camera body, you're not just buying the camera body, you're buying into a whole ecosystem. We're talking about lenses, accessories, services, product roadmaps. Unfortunately, Fujifilm's ecosystem is excellent. Take this lens for example. This is the 23 1.4. I love this lens. It's one of my favorite lenses of all time. I've shot tons of stuff on it. Metal construction, made in Japan, beautiful, you can't get better. And all of their primes, all of their fast primes at least, are the same quality construction. And they're amazing. You've got the 16 1.4, the 35 1.4, the 56 1.2. They're some of the most beautiful primes I've ever used. They're not without their drawbacks though. These aren't weather sealed and the autofocus is a bit slow. But if you're interested in those things, well, they do this awesome line of Fujicron lenses. They're all f2. There's the 16 2.8, the 23 2, the 35-2 and the 52, and they're all amazing and they're much cheaper. In fact, Fuji lenses generally are some of the best bang for buck in lenses that you're going to find. Fujifilm also has all of the usual zoom lenses, a couple of specialty lenses, macro, what have you, and a few pancake lenses to round out the collection. Now there are some third-party lenses, I haven't used them, but they're out there. There's not as many as say Sony, but if I were you, I would be sticking to the Fuji lenses, the native ones, because they are just amazing. Now, all of that is to say that when you buy a Fuji camera, you're stepping into a world of excellent optical possibilities. So you can't talk about the Fuji X-T4 without talking about those lenses. Now, I'm just gonna come out and say it before anyone hits me up in the comment, I am a Fuji fanboy, but I have used other cameras. I've used the Sony a7 III, I own that camera, and I've used the Canon EOS R. Didn't own that camera, but I had it for about a year. I had two of them through a place I used to work at, and they are both excellent cameras. But the Fuji camera is the camera that I enjoy using the most, and when it came time to buy my own camera for myself, I've picked up a few Fujis. In fact, I've been using Fuji for the last 5 years. I've owned the X-T2 and the X-T30, RIP, more on that later, and the X-T4. One of the things I love about the X-T4 is the retro look and feel and the dials. It means you can dial in your settings, and if you're somebody that's really visual like me, you can look at your settings before you even open the camera and start shooting. If that's not for you, all the regular command wheels are there and they work really, really well. There's been a big improvement on the Fuji X-T4 in terms of battery performance. You can now shoot for hours on single battery. I do recommend picking up more batteries, but Fujifilm is now in the same league as your Canons and your Sonys, which is fantastic. Now, I haven't experienced any lockups or overheating on the Fuji X-T4, which is not something I could say about the Sony a7 III. That thing was always overheating and locking up, and I had to take the battery out of it. It was a nightmare. But something that does suck about the Fuji is the cam remote app. It's terrible. It's always bugging out. It's really, really slow and constantly disconnecting. So if you need to shoot yourself, you need to work around that because you cannot rely on the Fuji Cam Remote app. Now, I haven't had a chance to use the Fuji X-T4 much for photography because of COVID, but I did take the Fuji X-T30, which has the same sensor, on a trip to Europe for some street photography. So I'm going to show you some of those photos right now while I tell you a really sad story. A few months ago, I was moving house and I had the X-T30 in a box. And because I just purchased the X-T4, I wasn't using the X-T30 all that much, so I just left it packed away. And as is the case when you're moving house, there's a lot of junk that you need to get rid of. So I took a trip to the tip and I accidentally threw out the box with the X-T30 in it, and I didn't realize it until I'd left. And I called the tip and they said, "Son, that camera is gone." Yeah, I had to get over that. I just had to get over it. I had to let it go. It's a tragic tale that comes with a warning because also in that box that I threw out at the tip was a bunch of hard drives. Fortunately, I had backed everything up, so I didn't lose a thing, but the lesson is, back up your hard drive, kids. Back them up. Now, I think the APS-C first full frame debate is over, so I'm not going to get into it here, but I will say this, the specs are good enough. The Fujifilm X-T4 does everything you need to do without compromise. Face tracking autofocus, in-body image stabilization, 4K without crop mostly, 10-bit 422, 240 frames per second in 1080, F-Log, dual card slots, it's all there. You can produce some really thick 400 megabytes video files here, which means you can really push around the colors and exposure to your little heart's content. It's not perfect though, and look, no camera is, but the autofocus is not up to the standard of your Sonys and your Canons. Record limit is set to 30 minutes, and the headphone jack situation is a little funky. Funky in the sense that there isn't one, so you're gonna have to buy the battery power pack if you want to get that headphone jack. Something for video shooters to consider. But overall, I love this camera, and if you think you'll love it, you probably will. That's it for this review, and I hope that I've been able to provide some sort of insight or different opinion. I know that there are a lot of reviews on the X-T4 out there, so I appreciate you watching this one. If you've got anything out of it, please do like and subscribe. Until the next video, keep doing what you're doing.